Hi folks, Mike Weishauer here. Welcome to the 7th edition of Consultants in Carhartts Drinking Coffee. Today is May 1st, 2023. I know it's been a while since I sent out the last one. We've been awful busy. I promised I would get into specifically this issue, which is what are the flow of events inside a contracting firm. So we're going to jump right into it. Well, I'm going to pop up on the screen real quick well, I'm not going to do it. Somebody who knows how to do this is going to do it. But they're going to pop up on the screen our flow chart for a contracting firm. And what you'll see in that flow chart is 26 white boxes read left to right. Excuse me. It's not a value stream map. It's actually just a flow chart because it doesn't have any of the data that a value stream map would have on it. But the yellow boxes that are either above or below the white boxes just are describing what is inside that white box at a level that we thought needed to be defined. So that's what you see. The white boxes are the actual flow of events at this construction company. Now, they'll be a little different at your company. They'd be a little different at any company. But basically, they're all going to be the same. They start off with that trying to find work, clear up front, furthest upstream you can get, to end of warranty, furthest downstream you can get. That project's done and gone forever. Okay, so everything else in between are the steps in the order that this firm was looking at. But one of the things that you'll recognize right away is that if you go about 3/4 of the way out on that flow chart, you will notice one of the boxes says construction. And for the most part, most companies want to focus their lean process in that box. Even though there's 25 other boxes, that's the one they want to focus on. Now, the thing is, you can have great effect, and that's what I'm going to go over here in a moment. And you guys already know this. You can have great effect in that box. However, you can have significantly more effect, and the lean process is really going to start to flourish as you go upstream and downstream from that box. So let's just jump in real quick and get right to what we were going to discuss. So I already mentioned that it's a high-level project flow that we're looking at inside a construction company. It's mostly, we have been 100% focused in the box called construction, that white box, about 3/4 of the way through that flow chart. And one of the things that we learned to do is we learned that if you phase plan, so we plan in weekly time buckets, or we get out and we plan our big milestones and we look at our long lead time items, we're going to have significant effect on this project before it starts if we can get out front of it and actually do that phase planning before the project starts. I have a superintendent, so he's the director, he's the superintendent that all the superintendents report to at a particular construction firm, Jim, and he called me up one day and he says, Mike, you got to come take a look at how we're doing this phase planning. And it was fantastic. He was getting real traction from getting out there and looking at the things that needed to be done prior to the job even starting, so that they were absolutely certain that everything they needed, the people, the subcontractors, the materials, the permits, all the things that needed to happen, long lead time materials, were addressed prior to that job getting started, and that was it. It wasn't massive detailed planning, it was all those big things he had laid out, and he had done it 2 or 3 times and was getting a rhythm going, and that's what he wanted to come show me. He had a big room set up in their main office, and it was just brilliantly done, right? So we get good at that, and then we get good at the 6-week look ahead, and we start to realize that if we have the trades come in and collaborate, I know you guys know all this, but you have them come in and collaborate, and then they get better at collaborating, and pretty soon you see them actually assisting each other, right? I'm sure you guys have had that experience. I love when that begins to happen, right? And so now they're starting to do things without even involving the contractor often. And then we get the tick list going, so the tasks, issues, and constraints. And that tick list is usually done on a flip chart right next to the, all the planning boards in the big room. And now you've got all the items that don't go on the 6-week look ahead on this list, and they'll add up quickly, right, to dozens, to hundreds, and then to thousands. And what you realize is all the things on this tick list that are supporting that 6-week look ahead and that phase plan are things that were always needing to be done in the past and always got done. They just didn't get managed. So I'll say that again. They got done, they didn't effectively get managed, right? But when we did those things, we had tremendous impact, and then we pulled in the OAEC side of the business, we pulled in the issues log, which we talked about last time, right? And the driven off the confirming RFIs. So once we understood confirming RFIs, we understood Genchi Genbutsu, how it works, what it is, and why it works, right? And began to really use it. Then we started learning how to manage ball and court, but the main thing is that we started to manage is no stop. Nothing in the project, no matter how big, frustrating, complex, scary, whatever it is, we would still address it. We say, no, that doesn't get to ride for weeks or months because it's something we're not quite sure how to address or we just don't want to. It gets addressed that day or the next day, no matter what it is, right? That was huge. Then going on to ball and court, and we were able, and all of us have been able to get millions of dollars worth of improvement literally captured on each job. So we can actually show where we saved all that money, right? And you guys can too. But as I talk with these folks, even when we got to this point, and this is exciting when you get to this point with any contracting firm, as I talk with them, what was really interesting is we said, we have got to take the next step because everything we do ahead of this construction process is messing up this construction process. And as we get messed up, we start losing people. Trades and ownership groups and even people on the contracting firm will begin to lose enthusiasm about lean because you get stung so hard and so many times by all the stuff you're missing. So that's why we're jumping into this part of the process. So here's some of the conversations I've just had recently. We'll be working on some part of this flow chart, some part of this process, and you know, one of the top guys will say, hey, Mike, you ought to see the quality issues. We have quality issues on every single job to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars, cost us big money every single time. And then he continues on and we keep talking. And I'm like, whoa, stop, hang on. Everybody in the room, is that right? Does everybody agree with this? I mean, we can't just blow past this piece of information. And everybody in the room says, oh yeah, man, you wouldn't believe it. Can we start to capture that? Can we get our arms around this? Because I know you guys feel passionately about it, but we need to prove, we need to know. And I said, oh yeah, we can. And we started to head down that path. Items missed in the bid, items missed in estimating, items missed in design, and they all would add up. And each time I would stop the group and say, whoa, hey, stop. Are you guys sure? Are we exaggerating? Is it really that big? Oh, Mike, it's big. It's way bigger than you think. I'm like, okay, so hang on. Even when we're doing all this right, we get stung here so much that we overwhelm this good process and start frustrating people. So it's doing something. It's doing really good stuff and saving us millions of dollars. So we know we're on the right track. But this stuff is really messing us up. So the other thing that I didn't know, and you guys I know already know this, but I didn't know this, which is projects would take at least 60 days from the time that we got out on the site with our crew to start building. It'd take like 60 days before they get into full swing. And again, I'm like, guys, now wait a second. Are you exaggerating? No, we're not exaggerating. You get out to site and they're just starting to get fencing up and they don't have the trailers on yet and we don't have all the permits ready. There's just all kinds of things. It's 60 days easy or more before we get into full swing. I said, okay, that's very interesting information. And then it's 90 days after that before we send in our first billing. We're at 150 days before we send in our first billing. I said, guys, you got to be kidding me. Is that true? Is that a fact? No, it's absolutely true. We can prove it because we can go back to each job and show you. Okay, so we know that's a fact. All right, so guys, we're getting our arms around what we've got to do, but let's stop for a second. I always want to make sure we do this and do it correctly. And that is, you guys remember the lean house, right? We always go back to the lean house. And the fact is, the more just-in-time we get, the more problems become visible. Remember, that's the purpose of just-in-time. We know what just-in-time is, right stuff, right time, right place, right quantity, right quality, all that. Just-in-time, that's what it is. But its purpose is to expose problems. And we either recognize the problems and address them, or we don't. It's a very human thing, right? We either do or we don't. But the fact is, what we're doing here is we're forcing these issues out through the application of just-in-time processes. Okay, so just want to be sure we capture the actual lean learning here. And then, so we made a very simple goal before we started down this path. And we said, look, we want the job to start full speed in 21 days. So that's most jobs, not your giant billion-dollar jobs, right? But your $50 million or smaller jobs. We want to start full speed in 21 days. And then if they're a little bigger, 100 million, 200 million, we want them to start in 6 to 8 weeks, right? And we have a very specific time frame for that. And first billing to start 30 days after that. So most billings are now starting at 51 days, full billing, full first, section of billing. Instead of 150 days, we're at 51 days. That was the goal. So what we did is started creating guidebooks, just like we do in healthcare, manufacturing, distribution, finance, any other company, any other industry. And we start building guidebooks. Now, guidebooks, nothing scary about them, but you do have to do a little work to create one. So a guidebook, the first one, or the one we'll use an example here, is job start. So if you look back at this flow chart, then you'll notice that job start is right ahead of construction. So that's where we decided to start. And as we jumped into that, it got very complex very quickly. However, I'm going to say complex, simple's not the right word, but easy to get your arms around if you did the work. But you just really had to focus and do that detailed work to figure out what all the steps are in the job start process. So this team came up with 8 different sections of that job start guide. So there you got one guidebook, that's the job start guide, and you guys are welcome to take a look at that. And you have 8 different sections inside that guidebook, and each of those 8 sections has a series of tasks that have to be completed in order and executed by a specific person on a specific date. So now you've got 8 different sections set up in this 21 days, right? So you got, really what it comes down to is this. You've got 4 weeks before you're going to be on-site building at full speed so that you can invoice in 30 days. And in that 4 weeks, you've got preparing for week number 1 in that 4 weeks, and then week number 1. So that's your first 2 sections of your guidebook. Preparing for week number 2, week number 2. So that's number 3 and 4, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4, these sections. So every time we go to a meeting or every time we're taking care of a series of tasks or events along this path, we know specifically what all the components were of that task, okay? So you can see why it was a little bit of work to get there. But of course, once you get there, the major relief is, wait a second, there's hundreds of items that have to be taken care of by dozens of different people inside our organization who are all in different departments, right? Plus there's a bunch of things our subs are supposed to be doing and our ownership group. And now when you take a look at all that, you say, oh man, if we didn't have this all written down, how in the world were we doing this before? Because we were literally just working on our memory, right? And we would say things like, well, that guy's a professional, he should have done this, and he should have done that, and he should have known this. And you know what the answer to that is? He did. He did know all that. But the problem is the human mind can't possibly hold that kind of detail, much less the right order, the sequence, right? How many times are you doing something, you get it done, and you go, I should have done this first because now I'm going to have to go back and do that and redo this because I needed some information there that I didn't have that now will change what I'm doing here. We've all been down that path, right? But when you think this stuff through, the efficiency, hijunka, the flow starts to happen, right? And that's part of the eloquence of these guidebooks. So now we're going to move from reporting on results to monitoring progress. So if you don't apply the philosophies, you're not going to do very well with putting together all this detailed information. We want to capitalize on all that work. So the team created a spreadsheet and took all those tasks, those 8 different sections with all the tasks in each section, put them on a simple spreadsheet and said, here's who owns each task. And the guidebook describes for us what the task is, so we clearly know what that person's supposed to be doing and in what order. And now the spreadsheet has all of that listed. So now your executive director, whoever the project manager and superintendent report to, can monitor progress and make sure everyone's getting every one of these tests done in order. And we just have somebody set up a simple program inside that spreadsheet that turns any square yellow, right, any cell yellow, when it's 1 day ahead of its due date. So the project director can contact that person and say, are you tracking to get this done? We don't wait to see if people got things done. That's the old school. That's before Lean. Lean doesn't do that, right? Jidoka, we don't do that. We don't wait to see if we got things done. Hey, they're professionals. I'm sure they're on it. I know they're professionals. We all are, right? However, we oftentimes have people thank us in this process for contacting them a day ahead of time and reminding them. They say, oh, Mike, I was so busy. I literally would have forgot this. Thank you for the contact. And they get it done. So now instead of coming to the meetings and everybody feeling just slightly embarrassed because they didn't get a couple of the things done they were supposed to, instead of that, everybody's coming to the meetings fully prepared, and the project executive knows for a fact that this project is tracking to hit its 21 days. Right? Okay. So we're going to move from reporting on results to monitoring progress. And we use that spreadsheet we call a project start summary worksheet. You can call it whatever you like. It's just a spreadsheet like I was describing. Now, that's just job start, right? Inside that, we've got estimating, submittal process, pre-award, buyout, quality, pre-construction, commissioning. We've got all kinds of things. That's just a short list. We've got all kinds of things inside that process, each one needing to be addressed. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick example here. I just printed out part of the guidebook, so I want to make a point, and that is that this is just a page out of a guidebook, all right? And I'm going to go to about week number 3. So this is section number 3 of those 8 sections, and they're all set up the same. They have a task, right? That's always the beginning of the page. So job startup meeting number 3. That's where we know where we're at. The purpose: understand project budget, project approach, and logistics. That's the purpose of this page. Second part of the purpose: establish weekly team huddles. And the third: ensure team is staying on track on the job start setup. All right? So we know exactly what the purpose is of all the tasks that we're going to be working on. Who owns it? The project manager owns it. Who are the participants? Project executive, project engineer, superintendent, and project administrator. Okay? Timing, it tells you when. Materials, tells you what you need. Steps, and here's what I wanted to get to. PM, so there's 7 steps on this job start meeting number 3 process. So we know we've got the process done, when we've done these 7 steps, and if it's on this sheet, we know when and who, and we know that somebody's monitoring progress so that we'll never have a spot, never have a time when somebody's missed a commitment. Okay? But here's what those points are. Project manager reviews roles and responsibilities matrix and adjusts as needed. Project manager reviews final budget with the software team. Project manager reviews manpower and materials for self-perform. And then the team plans the means and methods for self-perform. We set up and review the project logistics plan, right? And then the list goes on. But that's where I wanted to stop. That whole PM review weekly team meeting. Superintendent review project logistics plan. So the project logistics plan is a plan. And it went through the same series of events that we went through to create this. And we know what all those steps are. And that book has its own sections, right? It didn't take us nearly as long to put it together as this did, but we followed the same disciplines, again, so that we're not relying on somebody's memory to do that. We need to make sure that that superintendent understands exactly what the components of a logistics plan are and that he's addressed all those components. And one of those things is going to be that he went to the job site, right? And when he got to the job site, he had a list of things that he was going to be looking for and doing at the job site. So, just want to make the point. As you look at each item in the guidebooks, they're broken down into the proper details to support the item that just is in one sentence. Build the logistics plan. Okay? Just wanted to point that out so that you understand. Of course, that's where you're going. And it's why lean pays huge dividends decades into the future, because you keep having these different processes that you need to work on, that you continually work on to improve the process that you're performing right now. All right, in the end, one of the things that we had a tough time in the beginning back in the 80s was our supplier certifications, right? In other words, we're going to go out and audit our suppliers' businesses to make sure that they are the kind of people that we want even bidding on the work that we give them. And at first it was like, oh, you can't do that, that's just crazy, right? But that was back in the 80s, and it was crazy then because we didn't have our act together in any part of our manufacturing firms. But now, to get certified at most manufacturing firms that have been down the lean path quite a ways, you're going to have to be a really good company. You're going to have to be really lean, you're going to have to be really good, you got to perform in a way that is completely reasonable for an organization who is a few years down the lean path, and completely unreasonable for somebody who hasn't, right? And we got to start heading that direction. We're going to have to start heading that direction because, just like the Japanese taught us in manufacturing, we're going to have to learn the same basic core lesson, which is our suppliers are our partners. And they have got to move with us along this path, or they've got to fall off while somebody else takes that place who is willing to move along that path. It has to be, or you're stuck, you're stopped. Remember Taiichi Ohno's most famous saying, without standards, there can be no improvement. Everything we're talking about today is creating standards. And it doesn't take away, right, the concept that our people are professionals. They are. They're very good at what they do. It's just that being a professional and having a computer for a brain is just not reasonable. I cannot remember a list of 100 things and in what order they should be done and why one thing's done ahead of the other and whether or not you did your part so now I can do my part. There's no way I can know all that, right, in the complexity of the jobs that we have. All right, so Chris Heeger, I know I mentioned to you that this would be our next thing. Hopefully the rest of you got something out of it, and I would say this. For all of us, it's important to recognize where things fit. I just want to be careful that James, that we do understand that IPD is out front of this and that it has a major effect on how all this happens, but we don't know it at the depth you know it. So we're relying on you to, to kind of guide us along that path. But hopefully this further downstream from you helps guide that process too. I'm hoping all of it gets a chance to work together. So anyway, welcome to May, gentlemen, 2023. We're almost halfway through the year, and I'll see if I can't get that next video number 8 out in the next week or two.